Hi everyone, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company. We are a digital talk series throughout the year bringing you all the best creative voices across film, television, and theater. And today is absolutely no exception as we're so thrilled to be talking all things Full Frontal with Samantha Bee and all of their latest digital efforts, including Being at Home and the Pandemic Video Diaries series, which has been Emmy nominated along with the main show itself. And we're so thrilled today to be joined by the fantastic Allana Harkin, who's the co-executive producer of the show and one of the on-air correspondents, and Elisa Kreisinger, who's the managing digital producer. And I wanted to start by just asking you a little bit about, obviously your process shifted very, very quickly. You put that great pandemic video diary up of the day where the building was literally locking down as you were filming your final show there. And, you know, I was interested in how the creative process is different because even just communicating over something like Zoom, where typically you'd all be sitting in a writer's room, you'd bring multiple teams together, you really can't recreate that in the same way. So how has it really shifted your process, but in ways where you've actually found new creative ways of working together that you actually really like and find more productive?
Allana, you want to take that from the show side?
Sure. Well, we have no choice.
Yeah.
Mara, it's we want to stay on the air. So, but it was a real thing. Because I believe it was March 11th. Not I believe, it was March 11th. That date is burned into my brain. When we were basically locked in the building. We had to shoot the show really quickly, but we didn't really know that everybody in the CBS building had left and locked up. And so it was like a movie suddenly because we were locked in and we had to go through, and that's actually in one of the episodes. We were stuck and we had to go through a service elevator, and the two guys were like working the service elevator going, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "We just finished shooting a show." We got locked in the building. But and then it was, you know, realizing the next couple of days that we weren't going to get back in, then realizing we were in a full pandemic, and then, you know, all jumping on the phone going, what are we going to do? We've got to get the show. Could we get the show back up on the air? And we did that pretty quickly, but I have to say that nobody had a weekend off for at least 3 months. It's so much more work than doing it from our offices. But in terms of for digital, just to give you a little bit of background, or at least to jump in at any point, I love how there's a giant fly flying around here too. Just welcome to our worlds. We had a whole series that we shot called, it was sort of a take on a little bit like Masterclass in that, and then, you know, that was like how you make a show. And we had shot hours upon hours of video in prep for this series that as soon as the pandemic hit, it became completely irrelevant. Like, no one wants to see because we're not in this world anymore. So the digital team, which Elisa manages and who are so brilliant, immediately went, well, let's just make something about what we're in right now. And everyone hit the ground running. And it was really the digital team who created the proof of concept, was Being at Home, that we could do a show in Sam's backyard. And then I'll let Elisa take over because it was her brilliance.
Well, no, I mean, you bring up
set forth everything.
You bring up a good point, which was that, like, we were already documenting things for something totally different. So when you guys were stuck in that elevator, like, we were there with a camera to document that whole thing. We were there on set when we got evacuated from the studio because we were documenting it for a whole other project. So it just ended up working out really well that we just happened to have cameras rolling when it all went down. We were kind of shooting our own little internal reality show. And so it really worked out in the end. Yeah, it
worked out. We're still in a pandemic. We're all working from home, but it worked out. We got nominated for an Emmy.
It worked out. And I think it really worked out for the better. You said, like, what would you keep? Like, what worked out really well? And I think what worked out, like, no other moment in time could we do this because of bandwidth speeds and just because of, like, the technology on your phone. Like, you would never be able to shoot video on your phone or on a Zoom or on your, you know, your computer to the quality that you could now and put it on TV or put it in a digital series. So like we really lucked out in that way, because the things that we're taking away is like, oh, we can get away with shooting video on anything as long as the concept is there, the creative is there, and the production values come in other ways. The storyline is really awesome. You know, there's really fun editing. You can engage the audience in different ways. It doesn't need to be, you know, 3 cameras with lights. It can be super bare bones. And I think that that's one thing that will stay with us and stick with us as we move out of the pandemic, if we ever leave it. So that's one thing. That's one positive that has really come out of it. We've really learned to work with the barest of bones and make something.
Yeah, and Elisa, I wanted to ask you a little bit about when you first came on and joined the Full Frontal team, because you'd previously been hosting your own shows at Refinery 29 with Strong Opinions Loosely Held and The Ladies Room, but you kind of like had dipped your toes into this world a little bit. I found a great interview with you actually interviewing Allana on The Ladies Room a few years ago, and then the job came up.
Allana, can you believe that? Full circle.
No. All full
and then I know that
circle.
also like the job itself kind of came out of your work on the Not the White House Correspondents dinner, which led into you working with the team full time. But I was really curious about that journey, specifically in being in a space where you were really kind of front and center and bringing your own voice and your own creative style into an ecosystem that was already in motion, but obviously at the same time having such a strong sense of what that show was, since you already loved it so much.
Yeah, I mean, do you take insurance? Like how long do you have for that conversation? Yeah, I mean, like it's magical to watch Sam work and to watch Allana work and to watch the correspondents work. Like it's a dream come true being in front of the camera. It was great and is great, but at Refinery, I was literally doing everything, writing everything, booking the guests, you know, reaching out to, you know, Glenn Close's manager and like booking them in and figuring out hair and makeup and then doing the interview. And it's like, I came to Full Frontal and they're like, no, you don't have to do all of that. And I was like, oh, there's like other people. It's like, oh.
But she still does. A little bit. She still does.
You know,
everything.
We're still in a tight time. But you know, it's just amazing to watch, to see media in this moment, like go from startup culture and like what a show looks like at a media company, a smaller media company, and then what it looks like to kind of scale your voice, and for Sam to scale her voice on a larger scale and to take that voice that she has and then copy paste it onto everybody else at the show, and they have to replicate that in their own way. It's just a really interesting time to be making media in that way. And I've loved watching Sam I've loved watching Sam figure out how to do that in this new way. And I've loved learning from that because there's just so much to learn, and she does it so incredibly well. And she does so much of the behind the scenes stuff as well. Not only is she hosting, but she's doing so much behind the scenes work and kind of running the show and managing the show. And yeah, it's awesome to see and learn from.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Allana, I wanted to ask you a little bit about kind of your process and your preparation and how that's really shifted and changed for on-air segments, because, you know, you're used to kind of being out in the field doing a lot of pieces where you have your crew with you, or even in the studio, there's the opportunity to really feel the room and see what's working and workshop things. So how has that completely changed in this landscape, and what's the preparation that you do before you go on camera that's different now?
Well, I'm the crew. What I'm looking at right now, my computer is the crew and the audio, and I'm everything. Yesterday I was interviewing. I had 2 interviews, and all I could see, the interviews were long, so it was over 3 hours, and it was in the afternoon, so the sun kept changing, and I was really bright right here. So all of a sudden I still have some of them up. I was up with, you know, some of my kids' paper from their room and tape. I was like, you know, the gaffer suddenly, like, you're doing everything. But I'm fine with that, because I feel like I came from sketch, and so did Sam, and you have to do everything. Like, there was no like, I have to wait. I'll wait until my trailer, until someone brings me something. Like, I've had that as an actor, but I also feel comfortable in the world where I have to do lots of stuff. I miss not having to do everything. Like, I miss just being able to focus on the research and the questions and the person I'm interviewing, not being like, oh my gosh, is my computer plugged in? I hope nothing crashes. Is my ring light on? You know what I mean? I'll just see the sun's changing. And this is where my head is now. I'm just like, see, it's not going to match now for her. The sun's, and I can't do anything about it, which I would never be thinking of on a regular shoot. The positive part of it is the freedom of, you just can do, you know, I'm shooting it myself. I shot something for Elisa today for digital, which Elisa came up with this idea, and I'm like, yeah. And I didn't realize it was going to take me 4 hours to do it. But it's fun. Like I'm directing myself. I'm just sort of riffing. I'm coming up with jokes on the spot, which we would normally do in a shoot. But there's a different level of, the pressure's on, but the pressure's off, because everybody knows that there's just a camera, like my phone, which has 7,000 pictures of my kids on it, which hopefully doesn't run out of memory, shooting the piece, and that we're all trying our best. And to be honest with you, if you watch the show looks great. Like it looks really good. Like there's so much about the show now. When I look at it, I'm like, I like this part better. I like this part better. The hard part is that we are all our own crew. I miss the DP. I miss the director. I miss someone coming up and adjusting stuff, so that when I watch, you know, when someone cuts something together, I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody told me I had like that thing in my, whatever. But you do let go of things.
You're like a YouTuber now. Everybody is a YouTuber.
Yeah, and listen, those YouTubers, they work hard.
It's hard.
It's hard. And you're really
getting the ad revenue.
Really hard. No, you have to bust it. So hats off to anybody like yourself who's doing this sort of thing, because it's it'll be weird once we all get out of this world, and then what do we do? Like work with each other? I'm just kidding. I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. I also wanted to ask you a little bit, for both of you, kind of how the medium lends itself to the show, because it's been really interesting watching all of the different shows that were taking place in front of live audiences. And some of them you feel the absence of the audience, but this is a show that it actually feels like the medium of doing it on the internet and doing it remotely really feeds in, because a big part of the humor and the beats in the show is playing into those awkward silences and letting something sit in the moment. So was that something that you were conscious of and you've lent into it all, or is it just kind of like a natural thing that really feeds into the format of the show overall?
Well, in terms of Pandemic Video Diaries and being at home, the two digital pieces, they created an opportunity for Sam to do something that we have never seen her do on the show. Like when we're on the show, it's very polished. Even when I shoot the cold opens for the show too, and they would be huge budgets, and they would be doing an Aliens or a Jaws parody with, you know, famous people and blah, blah, blah. And now it's just, okay, so you're in your backyard, your kids are going to dye your hair, and we're going to turn it into something. Or I'm editing just before I got on this call, and you know, or this Zoom, I've been editing a piece for next week, which is just crazy. And it's nice to see her do those things that you weren't able to see before, like just what you're saying, like just take a breath and try something different that she hasn't done. And with the Pandemic Video Diaries, which is so great, we're really in that series teaching everybody, like, this is how we make the show. If you want to know how you make a late night show, specifically in a pandemic, everyone who doesn't need to know that, you know, watch this series. And that's been a really and it's been great to hear Sam just riff, you know, like, and we haven't really had that before.
Yeah, it's like all the human moments. I feel like we're able to share like the real human moments between our staff and with each other in that series, but also seeing Sam out of the studio, not on stage, not in front of an audience, not without a blazer on even too. And it's just a little bit more real and more human. And I feel like the audience connects with that in a really new and interesting way, because we've never had an opportunity to show it before.
Yeah, and one of the things that's so great about, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I do love it though, just on your blazer comment, how like, there's been some days where it's 90 degrees and she's shooting the show and I'm like, she is wearing a blazer. Like, she has committed to the bit. like I can tell she's hot, but she's like, no, I'm gonna wear a blazer.
The dedication is impressive. And in terms of kind of, as you were first making that transition and figuring out what the voice was going to be when you were conceptualizing, you know, being at home in the pandemic videos, what's so great is whether it's Sam trying to climb a tree in the woods, you know, that still feels like it's part of the overall voice of the main show. You know, that fits into her interviewing Kamala Harris and talking to her about wanting her to be vice president. It all feels like it's part of the same thing. Were there conversations that you were all having about how to really kind of take this different trajectory, but make sure that it was consistently looping back in that way?
I think our editors have worked on the show long enough. Allana, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like our editors love the show, especially on digital. Like, our digital editors love the show so much, have been embedded in the voice, and have had like the last year of kind of trial and error of trying to get that down right. So I really like chalk it up to our editors, Anthony and Laura, and our producers, another Anthony, not the same one, and Dunphy, Caroline Dunphy, who really, like, they come from all different parts of the show and nail the voice. So they were really able to copy and paste that kind of, that rhythm and that tone onto this series, even though, yeah, it is a little bit different, but it stays, I'm glad you said that. Yeah, it stays within the voice of Sam and what Sam would do.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the way that you're working, and you were touching a little bit before about how it takes so much more time to put the show together remotely because of how you're having to work differently, you know, and I know that everyone talks a lot about how 2016 and the way that politics has shifted and changed and everything's become more rapid over the last few years has really altered and changed the pacing of particularly shows like this. Like, I went to a taping of this a year ago and we all had to sit in the holding room because there was a last minute script change happening that needed to be vetted by legal based on some news that had just shifted and changed. So that's something that you've already been contending with. But the pandemic, it's like twofold on top of that. So it's taking 2016 politics until now and then putting it into an even faster speed. So how has that really forced you to think about working differently and do a lot more things on the fly?
Maybe we're less precious, you know? There's a lot of ideas. The one thing about our show is that, you know, but I must say, like, Pandemic Video Diary, although we shot it really fast and we did so much in the past few months to make it happen, we had months and months of discussion prior to it, like the series that we wanted to create about how to make it. So with Anthony and Caroline, we'd had this sort of like, what's the heart and tone of this series that we want to show? Like, what do we want to reveal? And like, let's just tell everybody how we do, you know, enough with the secrets of how you make late night. Let's just tell people and kind of share how we do it as, you know, one of the only women in late nights who's still, you know, 5th season, still getting nominated for Emmys. Vote for us. You know, it changed so that we knew what we were going into. But the other thing is that we have tons of ideas and we're shooting them so quickly and we're turning things around. And I have to agree with Elisa. We have an editor who right now is taking my basically 3 hours of filming and turning it into a piece in the next couple hours. And at the end of all of when I was shooting, I kept on saying, I'm really sorry. This is so much longer than I thought it was gonna be. Sorry, Laura, sorry for that. But it'll be a miracle. She's gonna do it and we'll get it out tonight. And I find that the speed with which we're working is really exciting. And we're so lucky in late night that we get to do that, because in a regular television show, you shoot something and then you see it like how long later. We shoot something in the morning and it's being shared at 9 p.m. So, yeah. And I think that's kind of new to these pandemic months. What do you think, Elisa? We were doing it prior to, but now we're just like, we're firing with all cylinders.
Yeah, to your point, I feel like we're a lot less precious, definitely. And for anybody like who watches this, who's familiar with like YouTube or putting out social video, the concept of shooting something in the morning and then putting it out that night is like not revolutionary, right? Like people do it all the time. But I will say, for a television show, like, that is very rare. For, you know, a media company, that is rare. Like, it doesn't exist. There's so many layers. Like a YouTuber, like we talked about earlier, like, wouldn't have to go through all the layers of legal that we have to go through. You know, there's just like, there's barriers when it comes to positive, you know, it's a positive problem, barriers that come with quick turn digital assets when you work at a larger media company or at a show that you just kind of have to do, which is why it's just harder to do. And you also have to remember, we're doing that all from home on like a regular consumer level bandwidth. Like, nobody has like Ethernet ports, you know, like in every room of their house and are hardwired in like we would be at the office. So everything just takes so much time. Uploading footage takes time. And if you're, you know, like a YouTuber or somebody that makes IG lives or whatever, like you know that it's just like usually we have like a full team, and it's just really interesting to like see and use this time and map like an old system onto a very new system, but also find ways to make the old still relevant and the new stuff use that same speed and rigor to turn it out with the news cycle. So it's a really interesting blending of like times and technologies, and it's kind of fascinating and really fun. We're doing our best to like turn it out as quickly as possible. But yeah, I definitely think we're being less precious, and we're just excited to work from home and use this time to like really make something fun that matches the time that we're in and reflects the reality that we're in. I feel like that's what we're all looking for, is like someone to tell us that we're not crazy. And for so many people, that person is Sam.
We are tired though.
Yeah.
We're so tired. I'm so tired.
I'm so tired.
Well, I'm particularly tired today because I feel like this week has been 100 days, because we worked all day and then we watched the conventions all night, and we were all, you know, tweeting and sharing information with each other up until like 11:30 last night. And then we're all up this morning at like, you know, 8:30. Yeah. And jumping on Slack. And so today I feel like this.
Yeah. I think that's a reasonable response.
This is exciting work.
And actually, one of the things I wanted to ask you
for the RNC.
One of the other things that I wanted to ask you about, Elisa, in terms of like the digital side, because you're not just conceptualizing and producing and putting out this content, you're also kind of really looking at like how things are connecting to people and the strategy of it all. And given the way that audience appetites have shifted and changed, everybody's at home, everybody's consuming inordinate amounts of content right now, you know, and there was a little bit of a lull in content, but now it actually feels like there's more than ever. How has that kind of potentially forced you to pivot and change the strategy behind the type of content that you're trying to put together and the way that you're trying to put it out and connect with audiences?
That is such a great question. And I feel like, I don't know if this is a job interview, but that is an awesome question about like, the struggle that is this role in this job right now. I feel like for social people and for digital people across every media company is struggling with this. Like, do you change your strategy right now based on consumption models? And what consumption model do you go off of? Your own, what you're seeing in people's feeds, what your friends are doing, you know, what the strategy is that you're getting from your strategy people. So for us and for me, like, we've definitely seen that people are consuming things with sound on, which, like, if you work in social and digital is like, oh my God, we don't have to subtitle things. I do think subtitling obviously is super important, especially for people who are hard of hearing or, you know, have different disabilities. It's like awesome. It's great to have subtitling. And I'm so thankful for the closed captioning that people are starting to auto generate. Everyone should have it. That though, like, knowing that people are consuming things with sound now because they're not on a train, they're on their couch, or they're not commuting or in the office, has changed our workflow tremendously. We're also just putting out a lot more content because people are watching more. They're scrolling while they're watching TV. They're watching our show and they're on Twitter at the same time. That's not new, but what's new is that, like, they don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. to work out to get into the car to commute to work the next day. So it's like, how do you capture them at the end of the show then capture them when they wake up the next morning and continue that through line. So an argument that we have started in an act 1, how do you make sure that they see that in their feed when they're going to bed at 11 or 11:30 and they're on Instagram in bed, they see our asset, that through line follows, and then they're up the next morning. We've got our assets scheduled knowing that people aren't commuting so that we hit them kind of at every stage of consumption. I don't know who I just turned into, but that's our strategy.
Yeah, that's great. And then on a slightly different tangent with you, Allana, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was obviously when you were making the show in the traditional sense as a producer on the show and also as an on-air correspondent, you know, one of the things that you've always done that's so great is travel to a lot of spaces and really give a national voice to different potential audience members, different perspectives. You know, you guys were mentioning the RNC, which like usually you guys would be traveling to cover those things in person, and the DNC. So I was really interested in how, you know, you and your team are strategizing to make sure that you're still finding a way to speak to such a variety of opinions and have that national conversation whilst being so physically limited in the space that you have to work from to capture it.
Well, the one thing that, you know, there's an understanding amongst everybody consuming television right now that we have to shoot differently. So there's that's great, because right away we know that people aren't going, why does it look like this? There's an understanding. And the amazing thing is that we can actually book people that were very difficult to book previously, like, because they weren't available. And now we can just say, I know you're available because you can't really leave your home. So come up with another excuse. So we get lots of yeses, which is amazing. And we talk to really interesting people. Like there's 2 people I spoke to yesterday that you'll see on September 2nd who were like, just blew my mind. And yeah, they're in their homes. I'm in mine. We're all in different locations. You're not experiencing Ohio or Oklahoma or Tangier Island, and you're not getting the feel of being somewhere, you know, in another part of the country, but I guess you are with the people that we're talking to. It will change at some point, as it, you know, if everybody puts on a mask, then maybe we can get back to normal and we can go to the southern states and we can go meet people, because it's very crucial to our show. And we are coming up with creative ways. We have some creative ideas that I cannot divulge just yet, but, and of course it'll come down to whether our network will let it. They're very protective of us. Thank you, TBS. They want us to be safe. So when it's safe and hopefully it will be at some point, we will go back. We will, because it is so important to our show, and it's by a long shot my favorite part of the show. And it's been the hardest thing, because I love man on the street stuff. I love interviewing, just going out with a microphone wherever and interviewing people. It's my favorite thing to do. So, but you know, we've pivoted, we've tried different things, and you know, I think it's so far so good. Like it's working, and we're creating interesting stories because we have really great field producers who are still, you know, putting it all together. There were, you know, after this, I have to create some B-roll, and my husband is shooting it. And because I need someone to read lines with me, because there's another actor who's supposed to be in it, my 10-year-old will be reading the lines. So, and she's delighted. I'm like, you're playing a 52-year-old man. Channel that. So, you know, but hopefully one day, I don't know when. When do you both think? When do you think? A year from now?
It's so unique.
6 months?
But okay, but in our studio, like, we're so unique in that we share our studio space with so many other shows. So it's like, it's really interesting to see, like when you turn on MSNBC and you see everybody in a studio, like they're not really in a studio. They're all home. Well, except for this week at the DNC, they were in a studio, but most people are home. Most people are shooting from home. So our studio is like, we share it with so many people. So I think like, it's just been really exciting. Like you said, Allana, like you get so many better people. Like, is there a world where we stay in this like Zoom look for interviews? Does this become a standard? Like, that's what I'm wondering. It's so
forever.
It's so you
well, maybe
option, just an option.
Well, the nice thing is, I would say in February, we would never do this. This would be like, oh, we can only get them on Zoom, or I don't even think any of us knew Zoom. I didn't know what Zoom was. Did you know what Zoom was before February? I mean, yeah, I would be on an airplane even to get an interview. So it does open the door to maybe that one person who we can't meet. Like, well, should we try a Zoom interview and sort of cut it within the piece and see if it edits well within the live interviews? It might. It does. It definitely opens doors. I actually think that more people will request it. Yeah. I think some of the harder to get interviews, they'll say, can't you just do a Zoom? Like, why do you have to come here? I think we're going to get that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going away. And this is a little bit of a tangent, Allana, but something that I kind of selfishly wanted to ask about when you guys did the full Frontal on Ice episode, because that was the other time that I was fortunate to come to a taping of the show. And what was so fascinating was there seemed to be this general consensus amongst everybody of, you know, obviously we understood that it was fundraising money, you know, with all of the ICE deportations as that was happening. But there was kind of an assumption amongst everybody there that Sam was a good ice skater because she's Canadian. And the best discovery was that that was actually not her strongest suit. And, you know, I know that like, you thrived in that space a lot. So I was really just curious how that actually kind of came to be, given that fact amongst all of you, and how that decision was made.
To do it on ice, even though the host had never skated before?
Yeah.
Well, it was her idea to do it on ice. And then we're all like, yes! For sure, that sounds so much fun. And then we had a second meeting and she was like, so there's this one thing though, I actually can't skate. And I didn't know that. And I've known her for half my life. So I was like, how did you grow up in Canada and not know how to skate? Like, it's a prerequisite. You learn to skate before you learn to swim or talk or do anything. And, she just did. So it was, I have to say, it was so much fun. We actually had skating lessons. She was adorable and she had her own coach and she tried really hard, and it was actually quite moving. And I have to tell you, to see her learn to skate, I'm almost tearing up. Oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? It was so sweet. But you know what the thing was, which was really funny, is that, you know, we all made fun of her a lot. And it was extremely cathartic. And she's a very good boss for letting us all just tear a strip off of her. And I got on the ice and I couldn't skate. I was like, what? I can't remember how to skate. So, and it took a while, because I hadn't skated and all. I used to skate all the time, but then I completely forgot how to do it. And then Mike Rubens, who's from Minnesota, is this amazing skater. Like, he might as well be so it was a really funny process. But Sam's not somebody, I mean, and you gotta love it about her. Like, she's, you know, she's like a kid. She's like, let's do this thing. I don't know how to do it, but I'll practice. Like, and we're like, when? We don't have time. Have you met you in your job? When are you going to do this? And so she used to go, like, I think she used to go at like 7 o'clock in the morning and go skating. That's adorable. I don't know. Did I answer your question, or did I just say that Samantha Bee is adorable like 50 times? She was cute.
I love it so much, because I was just so curious how that ended up being the setup for the show, given the lack of the skill sets. That's amazing. And thank you so much.
What a great question. How did you where did you hear that? I thought that was a secret.
No, but
say that in the show.
I don't think you guys mentioned it on the show, but you mentioned it at the taping. She acknowledged it. And then she tried to at one point and nearly fell over.
And then you tucked that away in your interview brain for 2 years and said, you picked the right job. Congratulations on all your success.
Thank you. No, and thank you so much to both of you for taking time out of your schedule with the show and all of the amazing digital content that you guys have been producing during this time. It's really fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please watch it. Everybody watch it. Go look for it.
Yeah, go watch it, like it, subscribe. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. And vote for Frontal if you can.